All right, so we've got ADP 40, sustainment,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's a big one,
It is.
right?
Yeah.
But we are going to kind of pick out the gold here, the key things that you as a military professional really need to understand about how the Army keeps itself running, no matter the mission. So think of this deep dive as like your cheat sheet to this crucial doctrine.
I like that. Yeah, I think it's really important to see the forest for the trees. And sustainment is often seen as kind of the behind-the-scenes work, but it's truly the key to operational success.
Absolutely. So let's jump right into it. Chapter 1 lays out the fundamentals of sustainment. And you might be thinking, sustainment, that's just beans and bullets, right?
Yeah.
But so much more than that.
No, it is so much more than that. It's about supporting the entire force. So we're talking logistics, financial management, personnel services, and health service support, all of those things. And really, ADP 40 emphasizes how these elements aren't siloed. They're all interconnected and really operate as a unified force.
Yeah, that integration piece seems to be a big deal, right?
It is a big deal. It is. Think about it like your own pre-mission checks, but on a massive scale.
Okay.
You're anticipating needs. You're ensuring redundancy, just like you would check your comms, your weapon, your med kit before you head out. Except in this case, it's about making sure an entire army has what it needs, when and where it needs it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So let's kind of break down these elements a little bit, and we'll start with the logistics. So in the context of sustainment, what exactly does that entail?
So logistics is all about planning and executing the movement and support of forces. So ensuring that everything from tanks and helicopters to food and medical supplies get to the right place at the right time. And it really encompasses a whole range of subfunctions. You've got maintenance to keep the equipment running, transportation to move personnel and supplies, supply itself to provide the actual materials, and then field services, which you could think of as kind of the quality of life support.
Okay, so when we talk about field services, we're talking about more than just setting up tents.
Oh, way more, way more. Think laundry services, showers, postal services, the things that really keep morale up even when you're in a really austere environment. And it's about recognizing that taking care of the human element is just as important as maintaining the equipment.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the big flashy stuff, and forget about those everyday needs of the individual soldier.
Absolutely. And that's why ADP 40 stresses the holistic nature of sustainment. It's about supporting the entire force, both physically and mentally.
So we've got logistics. What about financial management? I imagine that keeping track of the money is pretty crucial when we're talking about military operations.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't fight a war, or even train for one for that matter, without funding.
Right.
Financial management ensures that resources are used responsibly and effectively across really the entire spectrum of operations. We're talking everything from, paying the troops and managing contracts to even navigating host nation financial systems.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly complex, especially when you think about operating in different countries with different currencies, different regulations.
It definitely can be, but ADP 40 provides a framework for approaching those challenges, really emphasizing the importance of planning, coordination, and accountability.
All right, so we've covered logistics, financial management. What about personnel services?
So personnel services, this is all about taking care of our most valuable asset, the people. It's about manning the force, maintaining readiness, promoting well-being, all those things that contribute to a soldier's effectiveness and resilience.
So things like, HR support, legal assistance, religious support. I mean, even the Army band falls under personnel services.
That's right. That's right. It's about recognizing that soldiers are more than just cogs in a machine. They have personal and professional needs that have to be addressed to ensure that they can perform at their best.
And then finally, we have health service support, which is pretty self-explanatory, right?
To a degree, yeah. I mean, it's obviously about providing medical care, but it goes beyond just treating injuries and illnesses.
Okay.
It encompasses everything from medical evacuation, preventative medicine, handling CBRN incidents, and supporting wounded warriors, even during their recovery.
So it sounds like health service support plays a crucial role, not just during combat operations, but also in maintaining the overall health and readiness of the force, right?
Exactly. It's about a commitment to the well-being of every soldier from the moment they enlist to well after their service is complete.
Okay, so we've got the 4 elements of sustainment, but ADP 40 also lays out 8 principles that guide all sustainment operations. What are those, and how do they apply in the real world?
So these principles are like the North Star for sustainment professionals. They're integration, anticipation, responsiveness, simplicity, economy, survivability, continuity, and improvisation. And they all work together to ensure effective sustainment across all types of operations.
That's quite a list. Are they all equally important, or are there any that kind of stand out as particularly crucial?
They're all important, but I think improvisation deserves special attention.
Well.
It's the ability to adapt sustainment operations to unexpected situations, which, let's face it, happen all the time in the military.
Yeah, military operations are rarely predictable. So how does improvisation work in practice?
So let's say you're leading a patrol comms route and your resupply is late. This principle is about how you still accomplish the mission.
Okay.
Using what's at hand, thinking outside the box. Maybe it's utilizing local resources, coming up with a workaround for a broken piece of equipment, or finding an alternate route.
So it's about being resourceful and adaptable even when things go wrong.
Exactly. And that's where the other principles come in. You need systems that are responsive to changing circumstances, designed with simplicity in mind to allow for flexibility.
So it sounds like improvisation is about more than just coming up with creative solutions on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
It's about building a sustainment system that's inherently adaptable and resilient.
That is a great way to put it, yeah. It's about anticipating challenges, planning for contingencies, and empowering individuals at all levels to make decisions and adapt to those unexpected situations. Now, moving on to Chapter 2, we delve into sustainment of unified action. And this is where we really start to see how sustainment fits into the bigger picture of joint operations.
Okay, so we're talking about working with other branches of the military, like the Air Force and the Navy.
Exactly. It's about understanding that the Army doesn't operate in a vacuum.
Right.
We rely on other services for certain capabilities, and they rely on us. ADP 4.0 calls this joint interdependence, and it's crucial for mission success.
So it's like a giant team effort where everyone has to kind of play their part.
Exactly.
What are some examples of joint interdependence when we talk about sustainment?
Well, think about getting troops and equipment to a theater of operations.
Okay.
The Army relies heavily on the Air Force for airlift and the Navy for sea lift. Without them, we wouldn't be able to project our forces around the globe.
It's like a giant logistical puzzle where all the pieces have to fit together.
Precisely. And it gets even more complex when you factor in multinational partners.
So we're not just talking about, other U.S. military branches, but also working with allies from other countries.
That's right. In today's world, military operations are rarely unilateral.
Right.
We often work alongside partners from all over the globe, and coordinating sustainment across these multinational forces, it can be challenging.
I can imagine. Different countries have different equipment, different doctrines, different ways of even doing business.
Exactly. That's why ADP 4.0 emphasizes the importance of clear agreements, standardized procedures, and a willingness to share resources and expertise. It's all about building interoperability so that we can work together effectively.
Now, Chapter 2 also delves into the role of operating forces.
Yeah.
So are we shifting from the strategic level to more like the boots on the ground perspective?
Exactly. It's about how sustainment is planned and executed at the operational level, where units are actually conducting missions.
So who are the key players at this level?
Well, it starts with the Army Service Component Command, or ASCC.
Yeah.
They are the primary Army headquarters responsible for supporting a specific geographic combatant command.
So for example, if we're talking about operations in the Middle East, the ASCC for U.S. Central Command would be the main Army organization responsible for coordinating sustainment in that region.
That's right. And within the ASCC, we have a number of subordinate organizations responsible for specific sustainment functions.
Okay, let's unpack those a little bit. So first up, we have the Theater Sustainment Command, or TSC.
Right.
What's their role?
So the TSC is really the Army's workhorse for sustainment in theater.
Okay.
They handle everything from supply and maintenance to transportation, petroleum, port, and terminal operations.
Wow.
They even handle things like aerial delivery and financial management.
It sounds like the TSC is the go-to for pretty much any sustainment need a unit might have in theater.
They're definitely a crucial hub for sustainment operations. And then we have the Expeditionary Sustainment Command, or ESC.
So what's the difference between the TSC and the ESC?
So think of the ESC as like a more agile and mobile version of the TSC.
Okay.
They're designed to provide sustainment support in specific areas within a theater, often closer to the front lines.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about medical support? Who handles that at the operational level?
So we have the Medical Command Deployment Support, or MedCom. DS for that.
Okay.
They're responsible for providing all levels of medical care, coordinating medical logistics, and managing medical evacuations.
So we've got the TSC, ESC, and Medcom, DS, all working together to provide sustainment support to units in theater. It seems like a pretty complex system.
It is, but it's designed to be responsive and adaptable to the needs of the mission.
Okay.
And we can't forget about the sustainment brigades and battalions that are organic to divisions and corps.
Right.
They play a vital role in providing tailored support to units at the tactical level.
Right. Those are the units that are directly supporting the soldiers on the front lines.
Exactly. They're the ones who are ensuring that units have the supplies, the maintenance, the transportation, and other support that they need to execute their missions.
So it's a multi-layered system
Mm-hmm.
with sustainment organizations operating at all levels.
Right.
From the strategic all the way down to the tactical.
And it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
Decisions made at the strategic level impact operations at the tactical level,
Yeah.
and vice versa.
So for someone like me, an officer leading a platoon, what's the key takeaway from all of this?
I'd say it's twofold.
Okay.
First, understand that you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
There's a vast network of sustainment professionals working behind the scenes to support you and your soldiers.
That's reassuring to know.
And second, understand your role within that network.
Okay.
Know who to contact for what, and be proactive in communicating your needs and any challenges you're facing.
So it's about being a good communicator and understanding how to leverage the sustainment system to your advantage.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to improvise when necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the best solutions come from thinking outside the box and adapting to unexpected circumstances.
Right. That brings us back to that crucial principle of improvisation.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like that's a recurring theme in ADP 4.0.
It is, and for good reason.
Yeah.
The battlefield is a dynamic and unpredictable environment.
Right.
The ability to adapt is essential for success in any military operation.
All right. So we've covered a lot of ground here from the strategic level all the way down to the tactical level.
Yeah.
What's next on our deep dive into ADP 4.0?
Well, we've talked about working with other military branches and multinational partners.
Right.
But there's another layer of complexity that ADP 4.0 addresses, and that's inter-organizational coordination.
Okay.
That means working with non-military organizations like government agencies, NGOs, and even private contractors.
That sounds like it could get really complicated, especially when you're dealing with different organizational cultures, different priorities, even different languages.
It definitely can be. That's why ADP 4 devotes an entire chapter to this topic, outlining strategies for building effective partnerships and overcoming the challenges of interorganizational coordination.
Okay. I'm really curious to hear more about that. It seems like something that could be incredibly relevant, especially in today's complex operational environment.
So picking up where we left off, let's dive into this idea of interorganizational coordination. It's one thing, for the military to work within its own structure, but as you mentioned, things get a little bit tricky when we have to collaborate with civilian organizations.
Yeah. It's almost like speaking different languages sometimes, right?
Yeah.
The military has its jargon and acronyms, its focus on hierarchy and mission accomplishment. And then civilian agencies might have totally different ways of doing things, different goals, different timelines.
Exactly. And that's what makes this aspect of sustainment so challenging. ADP 4.0 really stresses that we have to approach these relationships as partnerships, not as the military dictating terms. Each organization, whether it's a government agency, an NGO providing humanitarian relief, or even a private contractor handling logistics, they all bring something unique to the table.
So how do we bridge that gap? How do we ensure that everyone's working together effectively despite all these differences?
Well, the doctrine outlines a few key strategies. First and foremost, clear communication. And I don't just mean, speaking cleanly.
Right.
It's about actively listening to understand the other organization's perspective, their limitations, their goals. It's about building trust and a shared understanding of the situation.
You can't solve a problem if you don't agree on what the problem is.
Exactly. And from there, it's about clearly defining objectives and desired end states. What are we collectively trying to achieve? What does success look like for each organization involved? By getting everyone on the same page from the outset, you really minimize the potential for, misunderstandings and conflicts down the road.
Okay, so communication and shared goals are crucial. What else does ADP 4.0 recommend?
Well, it also emphasizes the importance of flexibility and adaptability.
Okay.
Military professionals are used to operating under a clear chain of command with, strict timelines and procedures. But civilian organizations, they often function differently.
Right?
They might have more decentralized decision-making processes, or they might need to adjust their approach based on evolving circumstances on the ground.
So we need to be prepared to kind of work outside of our comfort zone a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
to adapt our methods to fit the situation.
Exactly. And that might mean being patient, understanding that not everyone operates at the same tempo as the military.
Right.
It also means being willing to compromise, to find solutions that meet everyone's needs as much as possible.
Now, ADP 4.0 also talks about the importance of anticipating potential challenges and developing contingency plans.
Mm-hmm.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. In any operation, but especially when you're coordinating with multiple organizations, things rarely go exactly according to plan, right?
Right.
So it's crucial to think through the what-ifs. What if a key supply route is blocked? What if a contractor can't deliver on their promises? What if communication systems go down?
Mm-hmm.
By anticipating these challenges and developing backup plans, we can minimize disruptions and ensure that the mission continues.
So it sounds like a lot of worst-case scenario planning.
It is, in a way, but it's not about being pessimistic, it's about being prepared.
Right.
By thinking through potential problems in advance, we can develop solutions before they become crises.
And this kind of thinking is especially important in stability operations, right?
Yeah.
Where the Army might be working alongside civilian agencies to provide humanitarian aid, restore essential services, or rebuild infrastructure.
Exactly. In these situations, the stakes are often incredibly high. We're dealing with people's lives, their livelihoods, their sense of security. So effective coordination, it is absolutely essential. We need to leverage the strengths of each organization, whether it's the military's logistical expertise or a civilian agency's knowledge of the local community, to achieve the best possible outcome.
It's about using all the tools at our disposal
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing that we can accomplish more by working together than we ever could alone.
That's a great way to sum it up.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to that recurring theme of integration, which we've seen throughout ADP 4.0.
Right.
It's about integrating different elements within the Army, integrating with other military branches, integrating with multinational partners, and now integrating with civilian organizations.
It's almost like sustainment is the glue that holds everything together.
I think that's a very apt analogy.
Yep.
Sustainment is the connective tissue that enables military operations to function effectively at all levels. Without it, the whole system would fall apart.
Wow. This deep dive into ADP 4.0 has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I have a much better understanding of the complexity of sustainment and how it impacts every aspect of military operations.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
It's a dense document, but it's packed with valuable information for anyone in the military, regardless of their rank or specialty.
Absolutely. And before we wrap up, I'd like to leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question. We've talked about how important interoperability is, working seamlessly with diverse partners in these complex environments. So given the increasing complexity of modern warfare and the ever-evolving nature of threats, how can sustainment professionals best prepare for the challenges of future operations? It's something for all of us to consider as we navigate the ever-changing landscape of military operations.
That's a great question to ponder, and one that will certainly shape the future of sustainment.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into ADP 4.0 Sustainment. I hope you found it as informative as I did. Until next time, keep learning, keep adapting, and keep striving for sustainment excellence.